The most expensive mistakes I've made owning a supercar. Well, the first one is going to be insurance. Thinking and assuming that getting insurance on a supercar was going to be easy and fairly inexpensive. Because I am 40 years old, I have a clean driving record, and I have good credit, but that was not the case. Now, I have always gone to Hagerty for a stated value policy. If you're not familiar with the stated value policy, it's a policy that you can get with a certain insurance company that will say that if your car is totaled or anything like that, that they're going to pay you for the amount that you both agreed beforehand. So when I called Hagerty and I wanted to get a stated value policy, they actually made me fill out a form. And the form asked me questions about horsepower. They asked me, is this the first car I've owned? My driving history, other history with driving cars of this horsepower. And the interesting thing is, when I would call Hagerty, I couldn't talk to any representative. They would have to transfer me to a senior representative because the first representative would look at my account and say, oh, you have a supercar, so now we have to transfer you to a senior representative. And when I talked to them, they essentially told me that Hagerty is trying to transition into insuring more supercars, but it's a big liability for insurance companies. Even all the cars that I've had, like the GT4 or the Super or anything like that, they were like, that doesn't count. Like, you have to essentially own a 600 horsepower car and above and have history with that for a while before they could even kind of consider you for insurance, in my case. So finally they agreed to insure me, but they wanted a very high deductible. I think it was a couple grand, and it was a probationary period where I couldn't change my deductible unless I had the car, until I had the car for about a year. So I did. I actually waited for a year, and then I called them and I was excited because it was like the birthday of the car, and I finally was able to pick my own deductible. But that was a pain in the butt. And the NSX was the same way. Like, I had to go through that whole process. And the cost for insurance wasn't cheap. You usually have to pay up front. And if you don't pay up front, you could pay like in 6-month intervals or less, but they charge you more. When it came to these supercars, there was a lot of like provisions and other things that were not included, that they were separate deductibles. It got very intense. And I think because for an insurance company, whenever something happens to a high-end car like that, it's not cheap to fix it. Now, State Farm had no issue insuring the McLaren, but they charged quite a bit. The next thing was taxes. Taxes is one of those things that is a big hit with supercars. And even though like you factor it in, or you're like, I've got this, sometimes the excitement of getting the car itself puts you in denial of what's gonna be coming once you get the car and once you have to write the check. But you don't factor in taxes till you go register a 6-figure car and it hits you in the face and you're writing a check for like $10,000. At the end of the day, like when you're starting to buy cars like these, your tax bill in certain states is gonna be 5 figures. But a lot of people have found ways around that. They do the whole Montana thing, and they do it very, they do it legitimately. And I'm thinking, knowing that there's people out there who didn't have to pay that because they figured out ways how to put it under the LLC, or they did the Montana thing, or they were able to do it some other fancy way, makes me realize that I'm missing out on some potential ways how to save some money. But definitely those are some of the mistakes I've made financially with supercars. Leave a comment in the description and tell me the mistakes you've made or what you think about insurance or taxes. And it's really expensive when you own a supercar.